Now turning to a bombshell revelation, Donald Trump insisted people inside his administration were working to undermine his presidency, and it turns out he was right. As a new book from Bob Woodward and Robert Acosta reveals, the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Mark Milley, sought to undermine Trump while he served as commander-in-chief. Milley had at least 2 phone calls with his counterpart in the Chinese government, where he looked to reassure the communist nation that the U.S. wouldn't be launching an attack. Calls are already growing for Milley to be fired over these offenses. And if true, he has a lot to answer for it in 2 weeks when he testifies before Congress. Let's bring in former White House press secretary and co-host of Outnumbered, Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, I definitely wanted you to be on the program to answer to this because you were in the administration. Did y'all suspect this was going on?
No, I mean, look, it was eye-opening when we walked to the church. I was with President Trump, St. John's Church. We all remember when it burned in that riot. I walked with General Milley. I walked with President Trump to that church. General Milley was there. He happily obliged in that movement. And then the day after apologized and said that he shouldn't have done it. So certainly that was eye-opening. But Lawrence, you know, I got to say this. My jaw dropped open today. When I saw this reporting, I hope it's not true. And I say I hope it's not true because I don't trust the reporting of Bob Woodward, unlike most journalists, liberal journalists who just buy it hook, line, and sinker. I don't. I question it. But if this is true, Lawrence, if this is true, that in the very Oval Office I was sitting in, that General Milley was talking to the Commander-in-Chief, President Trump, and outside of those meetings was back channeling to China saying, I'll let you know if there's ever an attack on you. I'm paraphrasing there. If that was happening, that is aiding and abetting the enemy. There's a word we have for that. I won't say it because I don't want to get there yet because I don't trust the reporting of Bob Woodward. But that is simply stunning in every sense of the word.
Well, Kayleigh, we know leaks were happening. And Obama, during his administration, when he had leaks, he went after his leakers. We still don't know who the leakers were. Actually, we know one of them, Vindman, who has already said, and we got a tweet from him, that Milley needs to resign.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because civilians control the military, the civilian commander-in-chief, not the military general who's not only back channeling to China, but also saying, you know, buck the orders if there isn't ever an order on the nuclear front. You know, buck those orders is essentially what he was saying. And Lawrence, I have to ask, the guy who says that he should have been leading the way, he's the right one on foreign policy, on national security. Well, I do have this reporting that I talked to a very high-level intelligence official who told me this. He said he sat in the Oval. I was not in this meeting, but he was asked by President Trump, how long would it take for Afghanistan to fall if there was not an interim government in place, a coalition government? That high-level intelligence official said very quickly, Mr. President, to which President Trump responded, it would fall in 2 days. He said this in front of General Milley, who then went on to the Biden administration to orchestrate the devastating fall of Afghanistan, where 13 service members died. I trust the guy who said Afghanistan's going to fall in 2 days, not the guy who sat in the meeting and failed to communicate that information to the next commander-in-chief, who then oversaw the fall of Afghanistan and the devastating images we all saw.
Not just that, Kayleigh. As you've noted before, this is the guy that made the call just the other day where they may have gotten the wrong guy and they targeted civilians. This is the Joint Chief guy that is all-knowing.
Yeah, it's the guy who called it a righteous strike. A righteous strike, which, keep in mind, President Biden, this is his administration, the righteous strike that killed a humanitarian aid worker, if the New York Times reporting is true, and 7 children. And the guy was carrying water bottles, but yet they target him as if he's an ISIS-K member. We've got more to the story to come out. We've got to make sure that New York Times reporting is true. But you're exactly right. He green-lighted the righteous strike that ended in the death of 7 children.
You know, Kayleigh, I'm no rocket scientist, but I believe my eyes. All I can say is I noticed a difference from the Milley and the Trump administration, and then when they walked over to the church to now. It seems like there's been a little flip-flopping going on with Milley. Am I missing something?
No, it certainly does. And Lawrence, I learned this the hard way. We hear about the deep state and, the folks over at liberal news networks say it doesn't exist. It does exist, Lawrence.
Yeah.
I communicated with the deep state in the hallways. And I can tell you the people who are very nice to your face, the Dr. Anthony Fauci's, General Milley, and then you find out in the aftermath that they've totally flipped the other way. They've existed in Washington, in the case of Dr. Fauci, for decades, making wrong decisions for the American people, on Fauci's part, saying masks work, they don't work, trying to save masks for our healthcare workers, but lying to the American people. They're nice to your face. They're part of the deep state, but they're undermining the commander-in-chief along the way, if it's a Republican commander-in-chief, as they did to President Trump.
Yeah. Undermining the president of the United States to get the adults back in the room that have completely messed this entire situation up. I guess elections do have a consequence. Kayla, thanks so much.